My name is Billy Harfosh, Star Worldwide Network Studios in beautiful Scottsdale, Arizona, and today we've got the law in town. Newly elected Sheriff of Maricopa County, Mr. Jerry Sheridan. Sheriff, welcome back to the show. Last time we did this, you had your political hat on. Today you got your cowboy hat on.
Today I got my sheriffing hat on.
So congratulations, number one. So you kind of come off that high of winning an election, and then it's like, oh shit, now I got a job to do. And you got a major job to do. You're the sheriff of one of the biggest counties in America. We have a lot of crime. We have a border issue we'll get into. And there's a lot happening, not only in Maricopa County, but really in our country when it comes to law enforcement.
Right.
So President Trump had a speech this week, and he sort of proposed something to Congress and really to the American people. And it was giving a mandatory death penalty to any human that murders an officer across the board. You murder an officer, you're getting the death penalty in America. Obviously, that's not passed yet, and that's got a long way to go. I just wanted to get you, as a man of the law, your reaction to that comment.
Well, I love the support for law enforcement. You know, those people every day that wear a badge and a gun, go to work, put themselves on the line for people they don't even know. And a lot of times they get eviscerated for some of the things that they do. And of course, you know, there's some things that have been done that are not right. But 99.9% of the time, those officers, those deputies, those state troopers make the right decision. And they should be supported by the President of the United States and everyone in this country.
You know, I wasn't going to bring it up, but this just came to mind, and I want to be respectful of you because you're the sheriff here in Arizona and not anywhere else. But on the right wing, specifically Ben Shapiro, I don't know if you're familiar with Mr. Shapiro, but he is this week pitching this idea to President Trump, like, if you're going to do all these pardons, why not pardon the officer that was involved with George Floyd, that was accused of murder and convicted, and he's in prison. I won't give my opinion here, but to state the obvious, if President Trump did, in fact, pardon that officer, I think we're going to have another BLM situation where we have mass riots, and that would happen in your county as well. Any reaction to that?
I hadn't heard that before, so this is my initial reaction. I would not be opposed to the pardon, because if you know about that case and the way they were prosecuted, they would never have been prosecuted in this county.
But you being in charge of the Maricopa County Sheriff's Office, you know what a percentage, a sector of the public's reaction would be. Mm-hmm. It would be a really heavy lift on you all here in Maricopa County. So, I mean, do you pay attention to kind of the national narrative, because eventually things trickle down and they impact our community right here?
Right. So I consider myself a constitutional sheriff, okay? And so obviously the president has the authority to do that, to give pardons out. But I'm also one that would respect anyone's right to protest, the First Amendment, exercise their First Amendment right. But they also have to do that by the United States Constitution and First Amendment. They have to do it peaceably. And so when they become unlawful and riot or injure somebody or property, then it becomes unlawful. And that's when law enforcement should step in. And, you know, for too many years, in the last 8 years, people have stood back, and law enforcement has not reacted to the unlawfulness of their First Amendment rights.
You know, so you're obviously not Border Patrol. You're not ICE. In fact, Maricopa County, something we've talked about before on this program, is not a border county. It's like the border is such a big issue here, but we're not on the border. However, it does impact us, which we'll get into. I wanted to talk to you about, you know, I get a lot of messages on social media and a lot of emails from people that are like, you know, Billy, you interview everyone, you know, the White House on down, and I've had a lot of Art Del Cueto and a lot of Border Patrol people on this program. I can't really figure out what's true and what's false. Are ICE raids, are ICE deportations happening as we speak in Maricopa County?
That's a really good question, because ICE has not talked to me yet. I was supposed to meet with them this week. Their leadership wanted to meet with me. They canceled at the last minute. And so I've got a meeting scheduled with them in the next week or so. So I don't really know other than what I see in the media, like you do. You know, there's been some effort here in Maricopa County by ICE.
I mean, so there hasn't even been, just to be clear, Sheriff, there hasn't even been, it's a new administration, but there hasn't been a dialogue yet as our conversation as we speak. You have not had a dialogue, which is kind of amazing, because you would think that ICE would be reaching out to the head of, the sheriff of one of the biggest counties in the country and also
Right.
a border state.
Right.
I find that a little bit shocking, to be honest with you.
Well,
Are you upset? Are you upset?
No, I'm not, and I understand they've got their hands full too. They've got a new president. They've got a new way of doing business. And they already know the Maricopa County Sheriff's Office is doing everything that we can within the law, and that is I have 2 ICE agents in our intake. We book about 240 prisoners a day on average, and those are from all the municipalities. There's 22 in Maricopa County. There's 4.6 million people here, so people understand how big Maricopa County is. And those ICE agents interview everyone that's booked, and they put detainers on the ones that are here illegally. And when the local charges are done, the sheriff's office, my organization, my agency, turns them over to ICE, and then ICE takes them.
So there's a political side of this, and then there's a law enforcement side of this, and then there's another side of the coin, which is the human side. When you do speak with ICE, you said probably next week, and they do start more public, a little bit more aggressive raids, if you may, how will the Maricopa County's Sheriff Office interface with them?
Okay.
How does it all work?
Okay. It gets a little complicated now, and I don't want your viewers to misunderstand what I'm saying, but don't forget, the Maricopa County Sheriff's Office is under a court order by a federal district court judge to not be involved in the illegal immigration issue, okay, unless they've committed state crimes. And so that has been our way of doing business for the last 12 years, and continues with that. So, but the way that I can cooperate with ICE is to allow 2 agents to be in intake 24/7 and to interview everybody and put detainers on them. That's what I am legally permitted to do at this point.
And we spoke about this in the past. Mass deportations. What does that mean? And you told me before, it's like, well, you might have millions of people. That's just not feasible for a sheriff's office or for local law enforcement or even for the federal government. So I guess my question goes to who could be eligible for deportation? Meaning, if you have an illegal that did a petty crime at a Circle K and they lifted a candy bar, or maybe it's a crime that's they get thrown in jail for a traffic violation. They're not necessarily gang members, but now they're in the system, and the government, state and federal, knows who they are. Do you anticipate people that have committed smaller crimes, not gang members, could they be eligible for deportation here in the state of Arizona?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. So Tom Homan, somebody that's been on the show, is a very strong guy and a very tough guy. And there's a lot of things happening on social media with some misinformation about...
He helped me get elected, by the way.
Did he?
Yes.
How so?
Well, he endorsed me, and it's still on my website. And he also came out here on his own dime. I offered to pay for it to do a town hall, and we did a town hall last year to bring up and talk about some of these issues.
Well, that's good. I'll talk to you after the show because we'd like to have him back on. But I wanted to get to the human side of this, and it's been something I've been talking about a lot, which is families. And just because you're an illegal, you're in this country, on this piece of dirt, this piece of land that we love so much, the red, white, and blue, doesn't mean that you should be treated inhumanely. It doesn't mean we want to see grandmothers or little kids ripped away from families. What I worry about with this in the new age of everybody's got a video in their pocket and social media is we have some sort of an event here in Arizona, in Maricopa County, where we see that. We see someone that's not a gang member, that hasn't committed a crime, but they get caught up in one of these raids and grandma's thrown in the back of a paddy wagon. from the sheriff's office perspective, how do we prevent that kind of a terrible thing that we could be seeing on social media? And then you know what happens? The protests come.
Okay, I have two thoughts about that. Number one is, if you come into this country illegally, you always should think that in the back of your mind that I could be discovered and deported. Okay, so that's number one. I don't understand why people would come here and even commit a minor crime and not expect to be deported when they're here unlawfully. So that's number one. The second thing is, there needs to be a change at the federal level, the federal law about allowing people into this country to come here and work and to do the jobs. You know, we hear it all the time. They're here and they're doing the jobs that U.S. citizens don't want to do. We need a better system to allow that to happen, whether they're farm laborers or they're laborers. You know, you go to any construction site and everybody's speaking Spanish, okay? There needs to be a legal way for them to do that, to come here and to work. And that is a federal issue with the United States Congress. They need to get their act together and figure it out. Put politics aside and get a visa. Make it easier for people to get visas to come here and work. And then that way we'll know who's in the country and who isn't. Because when you have open borders like we had, especially for the last 4 years, there have been a lot of serious criminals coming into the country. There have been terrorists that coming into the country, and who knows how many hundreds of thousands of people, the gotaways, that fall into that category of being a terrorist or criminal.
I wanted to ask you about the border. So under Donald Trump, you know, it's been a matter of months now, weeks. It hasn't been that long since he's been president. In his speech, he is touting massive changes at the border. Like, oh my God, we've already kind of quasi-fixed things. In your estimation, have you seen that trickle down to less problems in Maricopa County?
Well, I'm not the kind of politician that went down there and took a video of me at the border
With Dr. Phil.
You know, yeah, you know, with all that stuff. So I went down on my own twice. Once last year, early last year, and it was crazy what I was seeing. And I also went down about a month ago, and I met with Sheriff Daniels down there in Cochise County, and a lot of people know who he is because he's all over the media. Yep. And he had a huge problem. Now, when I was down there, those numbers are significantly less. And so he's being able to at least breathe a little easier at this point. But there's still openings in the fence, and there's still people coming across that are not coming through and getting found out by the Border Patrol.
But in other words, Sheriff, the Trump impact on the border, I'm speaking about the border now, is real. I mean, this has happened within a matter of weeks, and it's real. We're seeing changes. And I've heard this from law enforcement. I've heard this from Democrats. Like, yeah, we're seeing changes.
Right.
It's got to be just, for somebody that knows a lot about this issue and a lot about crime, it's got to be so damn frustrating that a new president can come in and fix it within weeks, and we had 4 years of the shit we were putting up with. I mean,
yeah.
And by the way, I like to give the benefit of the doubt. It's a difficult situation, and I was actually saying that during the Biden administration. But now I see a new guy come in, he fixes it. It's so frustrating because it's like, why didn't you? And the only thing I can think of is politics.
That's exactly right. And it's the politics of Washington, D.C. that has had a huge impact on the rest of us in the nation.
Part of your job is law enforcement. Another part of it is to communicate with the powers that be federally and also, here in the state of Arizona. I want to ask you about two politicians, two women that you know of very well, Governor Katie Hobbs and Mayor Kate Gallego. Mm-hmm. How is that? Let's start with the governor. How has the communication gone so far? I mean, you are the sheriff of Maricopa County. You're a big dog. You're the top dog now. You would think that you two would have a beautiful open line of communication to make sure we're on the same page here. Please tell me that's happening.
That's not happening. And, the governor has, I don't know if she's into her election mode. She's up for re-election next year. She wants to support the border counties, which again, Maricopa County is not. And I know that has been received well by the border county sheriffs, but I'm always skeptical of what the governor, especially in an election mode, is saying and doing. So we don't have a communication, and probably one of the reasons is I know I don't report to the governor, I don't report to the mayor, I report only to the citizens of this county, the 4.6 million people. And I am not too concerned with what the mayor's doing. I'm concerned with what the sheriff of Maricopa County is doing.
While I do respect that and I do understand that, I know that the governor is not your boss and Mayor Kate Gallego is certainly not your boss. However, as a taxpayer, as an American, as a citizen, as an Arizonan, it would be nice to know that behind the scenes, the sheriff of the biggest county has a relationship with the governor and the mayor of the biggest city within that county, so everybody's on the same page. It just seems like open lines of communication would be a nice thing.
Well, you would think, but again, politics plays a role. I'm a Republican, they're Democrats.
Would you speak to her if she reached out?
Of course.
Okay. Well, maybe she'll see this. Governor Hobbs, reach out to the sheriff, and we'll link you up. We can do it right here in public if you would like.
We did, just to make this clear, the sheriffs did meet with the governor last month, and she laid out her plan for what she wants to do in law enforcement. That's how I knew that she was going to support the border county sheriffs in this new budget.
You took office, your first week in office as sheriff. What was the biggest surprise? What was one thing that shocked you?
Billy, I don't think anything shocked me. Don't forget, I worked there for 40 years, and I was the chief deputy, which is one rung below the sheriff, for the last 6 years of my career. So I pretty much expected everything coming in.
Something that people don't know about your job also is the prisons, the prison systems. And you've been involved with jails, prisons, your whole career. How does the sheriff interface with our prisons in Maricopa County?
Okay, so the sheriff, there's a difference between a jail and a prison, okay? Prison's run by the state for people that have been convicted of crimes, of felonies, and they go to prison for that. The sheriff, on the other hand, gets people fresh off the street from all the municipalities that arrest people, including deputies and state troopers, and we run those jail systems. So give you an example, our average length of stay is about 13 days in the county jail. The state prison's about 3.5 years. So there's a big difference between the two. The sheriff's jail system is very difficult to manage because we're getting people fresh off the street. Most of them have substance abuse issues, major drug problems, alcohol issues, and so we concentrate on doing that. So to probably anticipate the next question you're going to ask me, I have a fentanyl problem in the Maricopa County jail system, and we're doing everything possible to stop those drugs from coming in. But for example, they come in, people carry them in their body cavities, okay? Just 2 weeks ago, we had some overdoses and a death in our women's jail. And the reason for that is the women have an extra place to carry these drugs in. And so what I've ordered is some x-ray machines. So when they come in off the street, they go through the x-ray and they can see within the body cavity. And then we would have a medical provider remove those drugs. We did a shakedown last night in the women's jail system. We found some fentanyl, and we found some other substances, methamphetamine. And so there are drugs in our jail system, and they're coming in basically from people off the street in their body cavities.
So, Sheriff Sheridan, I have a dear friend and a man that comes on the show probably about once a month, and he's in prison. I understand jail and prison is different, but let's just lump them together for the sake of this conversation. Okay. He's in prison, federal prison. Right now he's in a medical unit because he's having for a long time, he's having some health issues. His name is Joe Exotic, right? The Tiger King. And, he's a very well-known person, so it's a little bit more difficult for him at times. But the Tiger King reports to this show, and he tells us that it is easier to get drugs in prison than it is on the outside. He tells us about corrupt guards. He tells us about, people taking money for cigarettes. And by the way, like crazy money for a pack of cigarettes. And God forbid if you wanted to get heroin or meth or whatever you want to get, you can get it in prison.
Right.
So speak more to that. I mean, I'm not saying that your jails or Arizona prisons are corrupt, but what I'm saying is there has been a history of corruption and drugs in our system. How do we weed that out?
Well, let me tell you, I'm going to answer from the Maricopa County Sheriff Jail System because that's what I know. We've had 2 officers bring drugs in 25 years. I don't believe it's the staff. It does happen, but it's very rare. And it comes in, again, through body cavities, inmates that go outside the jail system, maybe to clean up around the jail. They'll pick up some drugs, and they'll bring it in again. And it's just a matter of, I'm also 840 officers short. I'm almost at 50% staffing in the jail system. And the only thing that's saving us right now from further problems is the fact that our inmate population is down to about 6,500. At one time, it was up over 11,000. So the inmate population is down, and it allows the officers to search better. They can't search thoroughly, even at the 50% staffing with the 6,500 inmates we have in custody. So it is getting in that way. It also gets in from people that are not MCSO employees. Even lawyers have been known, and we've arrested attorneys for bringing drugs in. It comes in through the mail. It's very easy to take a letter and to wet the fentanyl or whatever and dry that piece of paper out, and the inmates know that it's in there. Heroin is very, it doesn't take much heroin. They can put it under the stamps and all those kinds of things. The inmates are smart. They have all day to think about how to circumvent the system, and so it comes in through many ways.
Why are you short-staffed? Is it budgeting issues, or is it because you can't find people that want to do the job?
Well, when I left in December 2016, we didn't have that staffing. I think we had maybe 125 officers short, and we always ran about that. It was supposed to have 2,200. And but the last administration, and I'm not here to look backwards, but you asked the question, is a lot of the officers didn't feel they had the backing of the sheriff, and so they just quit. The money wasn't worth it. The inmates were running the asylum, so to speak, and they didn't feel the money that they were being paid was worth it, and subsequently we had over 1,000 people quit.
It's really funny. It's not really funny. It's a serious issue. But you had the other side of the aisle, really not all Democrats, but a lot of like radical liberals, once upon a time using the phrase defund the police, and all that kind of stuff. And Cuomo is running for mayor of New York City, and he was on a show the other day saying, no, that defund the police stuff does not work in New York City, and it ain't going to happen when I'm mayor. It's kind of interesting how that side has flipped to now supporting law enforcement, even though when Trump called out law enforcement the other night in his speech, the Democrats didn't get up and stand. It's like, okay, these are our firemen, these are our sheriffs, these are our officers. How could you not support them? But it's interesting to see the political shift that it's not cool anymore to not support the police.
Well, I think the last 4 years have shown the American public the weaknesses of the Democrats, and especially with law enforcement. I would throw out, kind of like what I did with our governor who's running for office, is Cuomo's now running for office. So he's going to say whatever he thinks he needs to say to get elected. The power is what has he done in the past, because past performance will also indicate future performance, right? I mean, that's pretty popular saying. So, and I believe that. Politicians say anything they want to get elected, but when they take office, what do they do? And that's the key thing that people need to pay attention to, especially with somebody with Cuomo's past.
Very interesting. So we'll finish up with this, Sheriff, and thank you for coming in today. Let's not talk about illegals. Let's not talk about the border, just more broadly. Let's just finish up with a conversation around what you need and what you would like to see to lower the crime rate in Maricopa County. Where are the hot button issues, and what kind of support do you need from state, federal government, the public, to make sure you can do your job?
Well, the Phoenix Police Department is woefully understaffed also. And I don't think it's a funding issue. It's more of a fact that they know that the city leadership, run by the Democrat Party, by the way, does not have their back. And so it's hard to attract new people. There's no shortage of young people that want to get into law enforcement. They just don't want to work for weak leaders. And so we need more cops on the street to be out there making those traffic stops, making the arrests. And that's what we need overall. The other thing that I would say is we have a huge drug problem in this nation, and that's what fuels most of the crime. The statistic is about 80% of crime is drug-related. And so if we could figure out a way, and this becomes a huge social issue, to curb the diet of people for the drugs, I think then we'd be a lot better off.
Just two comments on what you just said. It was interesting. You talk about police recruiting and the leader, the people at the top are very important. We saw what happened with Pete Hegseth. The Army right now, our military, our U.S. military is recruiting at like record numbers. And I checked on this because I don't listen to everything Trump says. I actually go and check.
Okay.
And the numbers that we recruited in the last 4 years, our military was hurting because young men and women didn't want to sign up. It's like, why? Well, times are changing. No, the leadership at the top was weak.
Well, you know, you must have been listening to my campaign stump speech for 2.5 years because I said that very thing. I use that as an example of why the Maricopa County Sheriff's Office is almost 1,000 people short. We're supposed to have over 4,000 people, and I have maybe 2,700 right now because they knew the sheriff was a weak leader, and that's what I ran on because we had a sheriff that was very strong in our county just south of us. Right, and Mark Lamb, I think a lot of people probably on your show know who he is, and he was a very strong sheriff. We had deputy sheriffs and detention officers quit to go to work for him for much less money. And I also used the military. The military could not fill their quota because we had a weak leader in Washington, D.C. So I think people are waking up to the fact that we now have a strong leader in the President of the United States and what he has done, and also with the Sheriff of Maricopa County. So our recent recruitment, I had 500 people apply for detention officer and about 200 apply for deputy sheriff. Now, we have a very high standard. We're not going to be able to hire that many, you know, maybe 100 detention officers out of that group and maybe 40 or 50 deputy sheriffs. But the movement is in a positive manner, and I think things are going to get better soon.
You know, the other thing you mentioned was drugs. Maricopa County has, if not the worst, one of the worst drug rates in the whole country. I mean, really, I think it actually is number one. We can check on that. Why? Why? I mean, I drive around Phoenix. I live here in Scottsdale. Every freaking corner, and I don't mean to sound insensitive, I'm just stating facts here. Every bus stop, there's people methed out, whatever they're taking, out of their mind. So what is going on in here?
We lose 6 people a day to drug overdoses. 4 of those are attributed to fentanyl every day here in Maricopa County. And that's because the drugs are very cheap here because we are so close to the border.
So that's what it is.
That's what
Again,
it is.
Not a border county, but it might as well be.
Might as well be.
Sheriff, I just want to tell you that I back the blue. I back our law enforcement. I back our sheriff's department. I think that you guys are doing God's work, and I understand that it's really hard. And I happen to have 2 close friends that are police officers, 2 of my best friends, and it's really hard. That's why the divorce rate's so high.
It's a tough job, and it's 24/7, and you work nights and weekends, and you know when normal people are at home, and there's so many different issues about that. But it's also a calling for many of us to come here and do this. I came out of retirement to run for sheriff. I gave up. Well, you know, I ran in 2020, and I wasn't successful. But a total, it took me 5 years of my life, 7 days a week, to get here to this point where I am.
And you didn't need this, by the way. I know, you know, people, you didn't need this.
No.
You could have gone out in the sunset, and I think you probably have a nice camp somewhere, and you could have had a cocktail and...
Well, I have a cabin up north,
right,
and I have horses, and my wife's my best friend, and my dad's 94. He's a retired lieutenant NYPD, by the way. He's been my hero all my life. And he lives with us, and now my mother-in-law lives with us, so I was so happy to get elected and go to work every day.
I hear you. Hey, so Sheriff, I sleep a little bit better at night knowing that you're on call, you're on watch. I support you and your whole department. Anytime you want to come on the show, you're more than welcome. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you, Billy. I appreciate it.
There he is, the Sheriff of Maricopa County, Jerry Sheridan. My name is Billy Harfosh, Star Worldwide Network, Scottsdale, Arizona. Make sure you like, subscribe, and comment. We'll be back with more explosive interviews.